I'm so free, heaven above.
To Capitol Hill to work out a compromise health care.
Soccer bopper, more fun.
Hi, and welcome to the Heat, where we talk about all things climate change. Today we have a couple of special guests all the way from Russia to talk to us about such hot topics as vulnerabilities and opportunities associated with climate change, along with some of the politics behind decision-making processes. Our first guest today is going to talk to us about some different opportunities and vulnerabilities in Russia specifically, such as the permafrost and melting and warming temperatures. Alright, so our first guest today is here from Russia to talk to us about some different vulnerabilities and opportunities associated with climate change. So please give a warm welcome to Jacob Dostal.
Alright, thank you for having me.
Alright, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Awesome. Alright, so what are you here to talk to us about today?
I'm here to talk to you guys about vulnerabilities and opportunities that come along with climate change in Russia. So the first vulnerability I'm going to talk about today is flooding. And this is due from the increased temperatures, which causes the ice to melt. The ecological effect on this is that floods are not only direct hazards to the people in the area being affected by the flood, but they are also hazards to a country's ecosystem. They damage crops, infrastructure, and various types of vegetation that may be growing in the affected area. It also affects the economy. With more flooding, there is a pushback on coastal land, which will inhibit Russia's shipping industries. There's also the inhabitation on Russia's booming farming industries. So the next vulnerability I'll be talking about today is reduced precipitation. And because of the world's climate changing, there is lower amounts of rainfall in Russia. Culturally, this affects Russia with limited family diet due to scarcity of crop production because of the lack of moisture in the soil. Economically, since Russia's agriculture is mostly based off of grain production, which has taken a toll from the reduced precipitation. This next vulnerability builds off of reduced precipitation. It is wildfires. And because of the lack of precipitation, combined with warmer weather, we have a natural disaster waiting to happen. Ecologically, forest fires reduce forest area and forest structure. This destroys the chemical and physical properties of the soil. Economically, fires can damage businesses and homes, leading to economic hurt. And socially, fires disrupt people's production and life order. Who is to cope with all of the vulnerabilities? It is your lovely government. Politically, with the awareness of global warming, people around the world are asking us, Russia, to take action. Economically, since Russia's economy is based off of fossil fuels, limiting these gases would hinder Russia. So the next vulnerability is permafrost ice melting. And with the permafrost ice melting, we have an increase in methane being released into the atmosphere, leading to increased temperature. Ecologically, with the ice melting, methane is being released into the atmosphere, increasing temperature. Culturally, infrastructure built on top of the land ice will become unstable and even collapse. So I have the last vulnerability for you today.
Alright, and what would that be?
Melting ice. Ecologically, specifically with polar bears, they are losing their habitats because of the lack of food and loss of living area. Economically, money, $60 trillion to be exact, will be spent dealing with greenhouse gases. So these are all the vulnerabilities that have to do with the global climate change in Russia.
Well, is there anything good about climate change?
Well, Hannah, I'm glad you asked. So the first opportunity is mitigation. And what mitigation is pretty much preparing your country to deal with climate change.
Alright. And what are some of the examples of mitigation in Russia?
Well, economically, Russia is planning to set up a solar capacity of 150 MWs by 2020. And ecologically, by increasing solar and wind power, more renewable energy will be used, saving the environment in the end. The next opportunity in Russia is the melting of permafrost ice, which I said was a vulnerability, but it can also be an opportunity for Russians. Economically, the thawing of the ice would add 20% more land for farming. And with this new farmland, culturally, there can even be creation of new towns around these areas. The third opportunity is melting ice, specifically for travel purposes. Economically, A new route is being established in the Arctic, which slashes travel costs by nearly 35%. This affects the social aspect because all of this ice melting is purely beautiful, and it brings a large amount of Russian tourists to Russia. So the last opportunity I have for you today is warming temperatures. And this is what caused pretty much all of our vulnerabilities that I share with you guys. But it may even cause some of the greatest opportunities for Russia.
All right, for example?
With the economy, the trade routes are now opening up, which allows more products to be shipped in and out of Russia. And politically, I think everyone in Russia agrees with me that it's cold. And with these warming temperatures, people can now go outside and enjoy their lives.
All right, well, thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Well, thank you.
All right, next up we have some
next.
penguins.
So as I was saying, before the Industrial Revolution in Russia, the economy was influenced by the agricultural. It made up 1/2 of Russia's income, so that's a pretty big chunk. The anthropogenic effects, though, there was an increase in mining to produce coal to power the steam engines, increases in deforestation to provide wood for steam engines, and steel was becoming a large economic factor to build railroads. Therefore, after the Industrial Revolution, the economy began to flourish after World War I. Textiles began producing tons of uniforms for soldiers. So the steel industry boomed to create weapons and armor. The increase in railroads to ship weapons as well as soldiers also increased. 5 of the anthropogenic effects after the Industrial Revolution were: steel factories increased pollution, mining led to very large amounts of pollution, deforestation climbed to maintain power for steam engines, mining also increased producing coal, petroleum, and other minerals. Textiles continued to pollute the area as they were created. Talking about the history of fossil fuel burning in Russia, since 1850, Russia was the 3rd top emitter of fossil fuels, which had to do with the amount of coal burned for trains. Also, the amount of fossil fuels burned to run their steel and textile factories added to this pollution. As of today, Russia sits 5th on the big board of fossil fuel burning and deforestation emitters. In the first half of the 20th century, most deforestation from felling took place in the former Soviet Union. Degraded forests are found around the industrial centuries in FSU. After World War II, enormous reforestation programs were called out alongside industrial logging. In the mid-1990s, large areas of forest were lost in the Russian Federation from causes other than logging, such as insects, which were 46%, forest fires, 33%, and unfavorable weather, 16%. In the 1990s, the atmosphere of economic stress and political decentralization has the potential to accelerate drastically Russia's rate of deforestation and forest degradation. In the late 1990s, total removals amounted to only 1/4 of the 1/3 of the amounts extracted in the 1970s and 1980s. From 2000 to 2012, Russia has approximately 312,000. Most losses happened in Yakutia, which is notorious for catastrophic forest fires in the summer. All of the Industrial Revolution, fossil fuel burning, and deforestation accumulated the capital of imperialism for Russia, especially due to the great victory of World War I. Russia ruled many countries, like Poland, Finland, Kazakhstan, and many more. Deforestation and forest degradation decreases the amount of plants available to chemically break down carbon dioxide during photosynthesis, which cause an excess amount of carbon dioxide called greenhouse gas. This remaining gas then blankets the atmosphere, which traps heat and prevents it from leaving the Earth's surface. This excess heat warms the Earth and causes global warming. There are 3 examples of this. They can be observed in landscaping, animals and plants, and people. For landscaping, since there will not be as many plants and trees to take in the Earth's carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, this causes air pollution, global warming, and greenhouse gases. Animals and plants play a big role as well, since it causes a loss of their ecosystems and habitats. These animals begin to die. In extreme cases, some species can become extinct. For people, since the lack of trees and plants means the lack of oxygen, which humans need to breathe and live, eventually, if we continue to use the trees for our own benefit, they will eventually run out. For 2013 through 2020, Russian government approved a national forestry development program. The new forestry development program in Russia specifies the objectives, tasks, and focus areas for the development of forestry in terms of the use of forest, prevention of damage, protection, and renewal. The program differs from previous development programs by the fact that the aim is to implement all forestry-related measures to manage the funding within the program. Some of the objectives for the new development program are in increasing the area of leased forest to 26% of the whole area of forest resources, which is 18%. With the help of the measures for improving efficiency, in 2020, the plan is to use 50% of harvested potential instead of the current 29%. There are 4 different types of main demographic people inside Russia. These different types of people are Eskimos, women, white collar, and workers. The vulnerability for each of these all differ. For Eskimos, their vulnerability is high compared to the white collar people, which is low. Women come in the middle and workers are upper middle. The carbon footprint also is different for each category. Eskimos' carbon footprint is low. Women's are medium level. White collar are high, and workers are lower middle. The income also plays a role within each of these demographics. Eskimos have low incomes, women tend to have middle incomes, white collar have high incomes, and workers have lower middle incomes. There are 3 lifestyles within Russia that are formed by either A, being a farmer, B, having low income, or C, an Eskimo. For example, farmers are an important livelihood within Russia. Floods can damage their crops, soils, and overall yield for important grains and other crops. Low income have limited family diet due to the scarcity of crop production. There was a change in the amount of wheat production due to the lack of moisture in the soil. A normal diet for this country is focused around wheat grains, and people will have to adapt to eating more meat and vegetables. For Eskimos, they will lose their inhabited regions, and their livelihood of hunting could be damaged.
All this and much more next week on This Week in History.
See you then.
Oh yeah, that's right, my show's on.
This is Jeopardy! Let's meet our contestants for today. Junli Yang, an enthusiastic Michigan State student. Sunny Fu, a returning champion. And Hannah Baker, a first-time appearee. And now for your host, Jacob Dostal.
Thank you, Josh. Welcome everybody to Jeopardy! I'm your host, Jacob Dostal. And today we have our reigning champ with us, Sunny, who had a very great week last week. All right, players, good luck. And here's today's Jeopardy round categories. 1, we have Russia's history. Then we have UNFCCC. We have types of cats, celebrities, and then sports. We'll start with you, Sonny, since you are our winner.
I will choose UNFCCC for 300.
What is UNFCCC and its objective?
What is United Nations Farming I don't know.
UNFCCC stands for United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It's an international environment treaty that first opened for signature at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in Rio, 1992. The object of UNFCCC is to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous and anthropogenic influence with the climate system. The treaty itself sets no binding limits on greenhouse gas emission for individual countries and contains no enforcement mechanics. Instead, the treaty provides a framework for negotiating specific international treaties, which are also called protocols, that may set binding limits on greenhouse gases.
Wow, correct. Awesome job, Sonny. Word for word. All right, your next choice?
I choose UNFCCC 200.
What is Kyoto Protocol?
I got that. I think it would be the international trade principle made by Japanese people.
Kyoto Protocol is also an international treaty that was adopted in Kyoto, 1997. It sets emission targets for developed countries which are binding under international law. It also creates a trading relationship among countries.
Once again, correct. Good job, Sonny. And on to the next one.
Then I will choose 500 in sport.
Which team won the 2014 Super Bowl?
It's MSU. Ta-da! Okay.
I got that. The winner is Seahawks. Yeah.
Wow, Sonny, you didn't get that one right. Wonder why. Good job, Junli. Pick our next category, please.
So I'm going to pick up the Russia history for 300.
What has Russia done in terms of addressing climate change?
In 2003, a senior Kremlin official declared that Russia would not ratify the international treaty requiring that cutting in emission of gases linked to global warming. In a subsequent interview, President Putin had told a group of European businessmen that the treaty, known as the Kyoto Protocol, ran counter to Russia's national interests. In 2010, Russia has submitted for registration its first GI emission reduction project under the so-called Track 2 producer, a move that could signal a substantial increase in the number of projections under this promising Kyoto Protocol mechanism. In 2015, Russia officially declared plan to reduce emission by 15 to 25% from the 1990s level. But the concrete level depends on whether Russia's forests would be taken in consideration as emission absorbers, and whether all major emitters, such as USA and China, of greenhouse gases commit to emission reductions.
Wow, Sonny, you got it right again. Way to go. Now you can pick the next one.
I will choose 400 in Russia's history.
Why Russia was more hesitant to join Kyoto Protocol?
Politically, no one Russian ministry consistently supported the ratification. And economy, it's hard to predict how the protocol would affect the economy. And the government and other policy-making bodies were in a transit, disorganized phase, making it difficult for them to reach a consequence. And the third is, energy sector is the primary form of revenue that economists had to be certain Kyoto would not affect. Environmentally, because of the distrust in green movements, declaring in 2000 that environmentalists were working as foreign spies, but Putin also occasionally acted with seemingly good ecological intentions. For example, in 2001, he developed the ecological doctrine of Russia and the strategy of sustainable development.
Wow, once again, great answer, Sonny. Please choose the next category.
I choose UFCCC for 400.
All right. In the classification of parties, what are Annex 1, non-Annex 1, and Annex 2?
For Annex 1, those countries are industrialized, developed countries, and also economies in transition. For Annex 2, these countries are the most developed and wealthy country. They are developed countries, but not in economic transition. For non-Annex 1, they are low-income and developing country.
Well, Sonny, once again, you're correct, and once again, word for word. What's your next category?
I want to challenge the 500 in Russia's history.
Why Russia has these policies?
Generally, economic growth has played a vital role in the production of policies that about cutting the emission. Russia joined the UNFCCC at 1999, which was the time when Russia's economy started to boom. They believe that they have the capability to control over all the emissions. Russia's economy had a strong growth from 1999 to 2001, but exhausting its foundation, so they soon realized the Kyoto Protocol would be actually harm their growth, then started to reject on Kyoto Protocol in 2003. However, Russia did not give up on addressing the climate change, so they came up with another agreement with other countries who refused to co-op in Kyoto Protocol, endeavoring to make their own movement while taking less damage on economy. Now, Russia's economy has reached its new peak point, so Russia recently claimed to reduce emission by 15 to 25% from 1990s level under certain conditions to earn international reputations. In summary, although always consider its economy first, Russia has been working positively towards emission reduction.
Correct.
Then I will choose 100 in UNFCCC.
Has Russia joined the UNFCCC?
No, it has not.
Yes, it has. It signed UNFCCC at 1999, and it entered into force by 2005.
Well, once again, Sonny, you got it right, as is with every other question you answered. So you are today's winner.
Oof. And moving on.
Hi everyone, I'm Junli from the H.E.A.T. Today I'm here just do some recommendation for Russia or to proceed in the future international climate change negotiation. So as we know, in 2010, Russia becomes the fifth emitter of carbon dioxide in the world. However, with the collapse of USSR, Russia transitioned to the market economic. So the Kyoto target of the greenhouse gas emission cannot satisfy for Russia's economic development anymore. That's why Russia decided to not participate in the second emission period of Kyoto Protocol. So in the past international climate change negotiation, Russia's position have been driven more by economic and geostrategic motive rather than by geological consideration. And when we're thinking about the relationship between economic and climate change, first, the economic development is temporary, and the influence of climate change is permanent. So we can consider the climate change as a chance of economic development.
So therefore, what do you recommend Russia do?
Therefore, we recommended Russia to actively adapt, mitigate, and contribute to the climate change, meanwhile devote to developing national economic. All of our recommendation is based on the new green technology strategy, maximum efforts strategy, and new job creation strategy. So all of the new green technology we created, we can share with the other countries. And in the same time, we recommended conserve the international climate regime because that one is good for Russia to continue profit from its fire of emission credit. So both of the conservation and the sharing technology were supposed Russia to call on all countries to contribute for climate change. So we would like to have flexible commitment for all participants. And in the same time, we would like to have the international recognition of Russia's contribution, which is useful to improve Russia's international position. So we also recommended Russia to provide education for Russian people. As soon as people improve their education level, which is good for them to get a job about the climate change. Also, because our people's education level is improved, so their opinion about climate change will be more scientific, which is good for Russia incorporate all people's perspective into national climate change policy. For the new green technology strategy for future generation, it is of course need high investment for research and development. So as the game we played in class, although the cost that the current generation will pay might be high, investing in future will help the future generation to be more successful. In the beginning of the game, everyone in the class would only think about themselves first. Russia did the same thing in the real world, which can be observed through the environment. Afterwards, countries discuss how to share their emission scores to help their neighbors. In the real world, the big emitters are starting to discuss the way to share resource and technology with these developing countries. For the job creation strategy, the number of jobs that would be created in the fields of green technology research and development would be a wasted investment to the future of Russia's economics, as well as lower emission in the long run. For the maximum efforts strategy, such as increasing energy efficiency and in developing renewable energy, in that way we can save the energy and reduce the emission of greenhouse gas. For all of the energy we can save today due to the maximum efforts will be the great capital of economic development for the future generation. We are living in the same planet and share one climate. We have responsibility of addressing global warming. As a big emitter, Russia would like to shoulder its responsibility. Also, we encourage Russia to contribute to climate change by sharing technology with developing countries. In the same time, we recommended flexible commitment for all of the participants rather than legally binding agreement, which is better to develop Russia's economic while working for climate change. Next, let's talk about the vulnerable group. So as we mentioned before, in Russia, all of the vulnerable groups, people including farmers, women, and workers, and Eskimos. All of the peoples, they have the common characteristics, which is low incomes. For example, as we recommended before, Russia could incorporate all people's perspective, especially for the vulnerable groups people, because of gender inequality. Currently, women are underrepresented in the decision-making process. As we know, women can make substantive contribution through their knowledge and experience. So women's opinion cannot be ignored. They should be equally represented in decision-making structure to allow them to contribute unique and available perspective. Depending on this recommendation, not only women but also all of the vulnerable groups people can have the right to express their perspective to their national policies, action plans, and other measures on sustainable development of climate change to define their benefits. For vulnerable groups people, we recommended to provide them for education about climate change, because the vulnerable group people may have a lower education level than the rich people, so that if we can provide relative education about climate change for them, so which will be better for them to contribute for climate change. And then next one would be the job creation strategy. Since all of the programs for climate change can be created many new jobs, so that's what we call job creation strategy. So the vulnerable groups people, especially who lose their job, and also get the education from this strategy, so they can be able to get the new job about the climate change. That's it.
Good job.
Great presentation style.
We have talked about it, and we think that what you had to say was very interesting. And we would like to continue to consult with you and continue on in future negotiations with you. So good job for you.
Yay! Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 65 Minutes. My name is Hannah, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a story that we started covering earlier in the week. Russia is currently the 5th leading emitter of CO2 emissions in the whole world. This is due to their textiles industry, along with their steel and coal manufacturing and consumption. The main issues that Russia has to deal with in regards to global climate change is the rampant wildfires and the melting of the permafrost and ice. Although the melting of the permafrost and ice could also be considered an opportunity for exponential tourism and economic growth. Russia signed on into the Kyoto Protocol in 1999, but in 2012 it decided not to continue on with its agreements. Going into the future, Russia faces the challenge of how to approach mitigation and adaptation for the issues associated with climate change. Certain groups have recommended that investing in green technology for the future of the country is the smartest way to go. It would create jobs along with cleaning up the environment. Thank you for tuning in today, and we hope that you continue to choose our channel for your trusted news source. Have a good night.
All right. I think that's enough TV for today.